Earth did not get attacked first. Earth had erased. Above Luna Arc, the Aegis lattice goes silent, and Terra has less than 1 day before it becomes blind. Admiral Celine Ward makes one irreversible choice. She orders the Sol system to disappear, not to hide, but to set a trap. Here is the question. When the invader steps in and finds only silence, will they realize too late that silence is not surrender, but a weapon? The first warning was not a siren. It was silence. On the far side of Luna Arc, the Aegis lattice stopped talking. Sensor buoys that should have been singing with telemetry went flat one by one. The Resolute's receivers held only a thin hiss. If the lattice stayed dark, Terra would be blind. Blind worlds did not get second chances. Admiral Celine Ward stood at the command well and watched the tactical display rebuild itself around missing data. The Sol system was still there, bright and familiar. But the arcs around the moon were turning gray, and gray in space meant you were about to be hit without seeing the hand that swung. Lieutenant Sato kept his voice level, but his hands moved fast. Relay chain is down. Hard cut, not drift. Wideband jamming. Celine did not look away from the widening gray. Source. Multiple bearings. They are washing every frequency we have. Celine felt the clock start in her chest. Not a metaphor. A real timeline, measured in outages, then in deaths. If they keep the lattice dark for one full cycle, she said, Terra loses the only early warning we have. Sato swallowed. How long until that? Less than 1 day, Celine said. If they keep hitting nodes. One question pressed behind her teeth, sharp and unavoidable. What are they taking first? She asked. Our eyes or our time? Outside the bridge, the hull felt the fight before eyes could. Radiation spikes made the ship's sensor stutter. A tremor ran through the deck as the Resolute corrected attitude to keep its heat panels out of the heaviest fire. Karyth Hegemony ships appeared on long-range composite as a spread of shadows with damped plumes and tight spacing. They did not chase targets the way raiders did. They hit nodes, couplers, and power trunks, taking eyes before blood. A systems officer brought up Luna Arc Station 7. It fed half the ring, and most of the backup relays. Its status lights were already amber. Station 7 has evac pods online, the officer said. 2 minutes if we clear the debris corridor. Captain Ilya Mercer looked up from his board. If we cover that corridor, we expose our port radiator field. Celine studied the Karyth formation. It was built for control, not spectacle. Discipline was not just their method. It was their identity. Clear the corridor, Celine said. Then roll back. Keep the radiators alive. If we cook, we die. If we die, Terra is alone. Point defense chattered as the Resolute pivoted. Interceptors flared and died against guided debris. The comm board stayed dark, not because the crew had nothing to say, but because nothing could get out. A thin Terran signal broke through the noise for a heartbeat. Resolute, this is Luna Arc Control, Station 7, a strained voice said. We are copying logs to your channel. Confirm receipt. Celine keyed the reply herself. Resolute confirms. Send everything. Protect your command cores as long as you can. The next hit broke Station 7's spine. On the tactical glass, the node fractured into a cloud. Evac pods streaked away like sparks, and then the Aegis lattice lost another piece of its voice. The bridge waited for speech. Celine gave them tasks instead, because tasks kept fear from becoming story. Pull every recorder, Celine said. Every heat trace. Every timing offset. If we are blind, we learn to see through noise. On the night side of Terra, city lights winked out in clean blocks. Not random outages. Boundaries. Karyth patrol tags began appearing in civilian lanes, redirecting ships into neat queues as if writing a schedule over a living world. Dr. Lena Maris stepped beside Celine, eyes fixed on the pattern. They are not looting, Lena said. They are organizing. Mercer lowered his voice. We can hit them now. If we bite now, we show them where our teeth are, Celine said. Kale Vorn will adapt faster than we can rebuild. Celine ordered a tight beam link to the Terran Continuity Directorate. After 2 failed attempts, the line held. Director Orson Cade appeared in a compressed window, face hard in harsh light. "Admiral Ward," Cade said, "tell me Terra still has a counterstrike." "We do," Celine said. "Not yet." Cade's eyes narrowed. "Not yet is a long time to bleed." "It is a short time to learn," Celine replied. "I need authority and time." She ended the call before fear could become policy. Then she faced her bridge again and made the decision that could not be taken back. "Silent mesh protocol," Celine said. Terra would go quiet to the galaxy, and in that quiet it would build a trap. Earth did not answer the Karyth Hegemony with rage. It answered with absence. Hours later, the Sol system looked dead from the outside. The surviving Aegis lattice nodes held fire unless a target crossed a hard line. Civilian channels were dark, and only the unavoidable signatures remained: industrial heat and the faint pulse of life support. On the Resolute, silence became work. Passive arrays drank in Karyth jamming like rainwater. Engineers turned noise into timing data, then timing into fingerprints. Every Karyth burst, every patrol sweep, every shift in interference was logged, compared, and pinned like an insect. By the second night, the crew stopped flinching at each new outage. They worked with the calm of people who had accepted that rescue would be self-made. In the mess, no one spoke about surrender. They spoke about coolant, spare seals, and which friends were still alive on Luna Arc. Celine met the Terran Continuity Directorate again in a narrow, encrypted compartment. Orson Cade looked older than he had a day earlier. "You are letting them write the story across the galaxy," Cade said. "Galactic Conclave observers are already receiving Karyth briefs. Talking makes them predictable," Celine said. "They are not stupid," Cade said. "No," Celine said. "They're disciplined. That is the weakness." Cade stared at her, then exhaled. "What do you need?" "Authorization for Operation Pale Lantern," Celine said. "We capture officers alive. We capture identifiers alive. We learn their chain, then we cut it." Cade hesitated. "Kale Vorn is tightening the blockade. He is moving supplies in a Luna arc." "Good," Celine said. "Movement leaves traces." Cade's voice dropped. "If he uses kinetic punishment, I cannot shelter your plan from politics." Celine nodded once. "Then I will bring you something politics cannot ignore." The call ended without comfort. Celine stepped into the corridor, where the ship's hum sounded like a hell breath. Commander Malik Rains was waiting with Dr. Lena Maris. "Authority will come," Celine said. "It is already useful," Malik said. Lena lifted a tablet. Instead of a star map, it held routines and handoffs, a lattice of behavior. "Karyth discipline is a machine," Lena said. "Units wait for the chain. They trust procedure more than intuition." Celine studied the pattern. "So we break procedure." Lena nodded. "We break one link and force them to overcorrect. Overcorrection is where mistakes live." Malik kept his tone level. "We win their calendar. Refuel windows. Escort rotations. Check in rituals. When they think they control time, they expose their arteries." Celine glanced at ship time. "Show me the artery." Lena expanded a faint trail beyond Sol. Small burns, masked repeating. Not random drift. A corridor. "Course corrections for cargo," Lena said. "They converge on a rendezvous, then handoff." Malik overlaid a second trace. A tight burst that matched a long-range routing key. "This fits Caro's gate relay," Malik said. Celine felt the edge of certainty. "If Caro's is their throat, we squeeze it." "Not yet," Malik said. "First we need their credentials. The ghost key package." Celine met his eyes. "You will get it," Malik answered, quiet and firm. "We will take it." On the next cycle, Karyth patrols near Luna Arc settled into comfort. They checked transponders on the hour. They rotated escorts on a fixed interval. Their auxiliary command ships hovered close enough to supervise and far enough to survive the first blast. Lena watched routine become habit. Malik watched habit become an opening. Celine watched Terra endure under a grid and still refused to kneel. Then Sato delivered a thin report. "Admiral, the micro burns are confirmed. They lead away from Sol and converge on one corridor." Celine read the coordinates. A bottleneck. Lena kept her voice low. "A place they trust. a place they cannot lose. Celine looked up. Then we make them lose it. The ambush was built to leave survivors. Malik chose an orbital shadow where debris from Station 7 still drifted in a slow cloud. Karyth had marked the corridor hazardous, but their escorts still passed through on schedule. Doctrine hated deviation. The frigate Glasswing lay dark against the debris field, drives cold, radiators throttled. Its crew spoke only when needed. Through a narrow optical channel, Malik watched 3 Karyth escorts approach, sleek and calm. Behind them, an auxiliary command ship followed, broadcasting a tight beam control signal to the patrol. That one carries their identifiers, Malik said. Captain Mercer patched in from the Resolute, replied softly. One clean chance. We only need one, Malik said. The trap began with a lie. A ghost transponder flickered to life inside the debris field, broadcasting a short Terran distress burst. Then it died. Karyth responded by procedure. One escort peeled off to confirm. The auxiliary command ship tightened its beam, attempting to register the signal for later reporting. Malik waited until the escort slid into the densest clutter. Then Glasswing released a bloom of micro-flares and drone clusters tuned for sensor blinding. The debris field became a storm of false reflections, and guidance stuttered. The escort clipped a slab of metal and spun. The other 2 escorts surged forward, aggressive and close. That was enough. A tight beam pulse punched from the Resolute into the auxiliary command ship's comm spine. It carried a copied Karyth handshake built from fragments Terra had collected since the first jamming began. It was imperfect, but it forced a pause. In that pause, a boarding capsule slammed into the command ship's flank. Magnetic clamps bit. Cutting charges opened a seam. Malik and his team moved through the breach without shouting. Their aim was not vengeance. It was data and living minds. Inside, gravity was heavier than Terran standard. Air tasted faintly of metal. A Karyth officer turned toward an alarm plate. Malik caught his wrist and drove him into the bulkhead. Do not, Malik said. You will live if you cooperate. Shock froze the officer. Malik's second pushed past toward the command core. A Karyth technician reached to wipe a console. Malik fired a low-energy cutter into the panel beside his hand. The message was clear without blood. Hands up, Malik said. Minutes later, Malik extracted a hardened module from the command core, sealed and keyed. Karyth's script marked it, then a secondary code that matched Lena's flag patterns. Sato's voice came through the link. Commander, the dump shows coordinates. Korus Gottevili. Nissa Junction. It is real. Malik looked at the pinned officer. Your empire built a throat, Malik said. Now we know where it is. The officer spat, more fear than pride. Kale Vorn will burn you for this. Malik released him. Tell him to try. Glasswing withdrew into shadow. Malik left the auxiliary command ship damaged, not destroyed. Survivors would carry the story, and stories traveled fast through frightened fleets. On the Resolute, Celine watched Malik clear the breach and let herself breathe once. Lena already had the ghost key package under analysis. This lets us walk through their doors, Lena said. Before Celine could answer, a new intercept flashed. A Karyth command burst slipped past the noise for a heartbeat, and Lena's filters caught enough to render a name. Grand Admiral Kale Vorn. Sato looked up pale. He is restructuring the blockade. Main elements are moving closer to Terra. Mercer kept his voice tight. Kinetic options are coming. Spear fall rods. Unknown count. Celine stared at the map, at Earth under a cold net of enemy control, then at the faint line leading to Caro's Gate relay and beyond. If we do not take the bottleneck, Celine said, quiet and certain, Kale Vorn turns this into a countdown. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The ship understood the weight of time. The next step did not arrive with a bright counterstrike. It arrived as absence and careful listening. Admiral Celine Ward turned the Resolute into a ledger of noise. Every Karyth burst became timing data, and every shift in jamming became a trail that could be followed. Commander Malik Rains spoke over a narrow beam. Backscatter is ready. We have 3 strike windows before their escort pattern changes. Dr. Lena Maris studied a map of probabilities. They protect what keeps them moving, she said. Fuel, repair capacity, and relays. Pride is a luxury. Celine nodded once. Then we trade time, she said. Helix swarm drones left the Resolute in a tight cluster, thrusters barely whispering. They spread into the debris left by Luna Ark's shattered ring, and each drone carried a reflector, a jammer, and a recorder. 3 hours later, the swarm pulsed across Karyth patrol screens as a fleeing Terran courier. One escort accelerated to cut the angle, and another stayed back, guarding a heavier silhouette that slid behind them. There, Lena said. They're tender. Celine watched the tender's heat signature. It was too steady to be a warship. It was a moving tank farm, wrapped in armor and routine. Execute Operation Backscatter, Celine said. A Terran cutter, stripped of comfort, broke from shadow for a few seconds, then went dark. It coasted under the tender's sensor cone while the drones warped range marks and jammed fire control. Karyth beams stitched the dark with clinical precision. Drones evaporated, then reformed, and the swarm did not panic. The cutter released microcharges that blinded refueling ports and forced a shutdown. Heat dipped. Pump stalled. The cutter fired a line, latched to a service node, and put a small team inside. They took one canister of propellant catalyst and ripped a diagnostic core from the pump controller. They did not stay long enough to become heroes. A warning tone rose on the Resolute. New vector, Sato said. They baited us. A Karyth repair corvette surged from beyond the tender, masked behind its own heat bloom. It threw a net of charged particles, meant for debris and now meant for the cutter. The Terran ship jerked, thrusters flaring, fighting to keep its radiators from cooking. Escorts closed with frightening coordination. Celine kept her voice level. Break the net. The cutter's captain replied. We can, but we will not come home clean. Come home alive, Celine said. The cutter vented heat in a bright flash that lit the net like a web. It tore free, but the burst gave the escorts a perfect track. A beam struck its aft, and metal bloomed into vapor. When the cutter finally coasted into the Resolute's shadow, its hull looked skinned. 2 crew were missing, and no one pretended otherwise. By the time the cutter docked, the ship's air tasted of scorched polymer. Damaged crews moved with practiced silence, sealing leaks and laying new insulation over exposed ribs. In the medical bay, a surgeon worked under shaky light while the cutter's captain stared at a blank wall. Celine stepped in long enough to be seen. No speech, no consolation, only her presence. It was a wordless admission that the cost had a name. 2 missing, the captain said. They were on the line when the net hit. They will be listed, Celine said, and remembered. Then she left before grief could slow the next decision. In her own compartment, she watched the stolen diagnostic core spin under a scanner. It was heavy with the ordinary details that won wars, pump timings, inspection routines, fault codes, and the tiny internal relay keys that kept a fleet honest. Malik carried the diagnostic core into Celine's compartment. We got what we came for, he said. Fuel chemistry, pump logic, and a relay handshake hidden in their maintenance stack. Lena pointed at the map where patrol arcs had already tightened. They will adapt, she said. They will build a thicker wall around their throat. Celine stared at the damaged cutter through a viewport. Small victory, real cost. Kaelvorn would buy time from it. Then we spend what we stole tonight, Celine said. The ghost key package was not a miracle key. It was a bundle of assumptions, a catalog of what Karyth officers believed would always be true. Malik and Lena built the Mirror Vox suite around it in a compartment that smelled of solder. No dramatic holograms, only logs and signal traces. Your imitation must be boring, Lena said. If it is clever, they will notice. Malik nodded. We copy their paperwork, he said. Their check-ins. Their apology phrases. Their delays. By the next day, Mirror Vox could shape a Karyth voice print from captured samples and reproduce a command cadence. Malik used a relay drone tucked behind a dead station husk, so the direction would look normal. He spoke in a Karyth commander's tone, filtered through Mirror Vox. This is Escort Group Ralvek. Report your fuel margin and confirm your last audit. A pause, then a clipped reply. This is Escort Group 19. Fuel margin within spec. Audit complete. Why is Ralvec late? Minor drift. Corrected, Malik said. Submit your authentication phrase, the Karyth voice demanded. They complied. Their world ran on compliance. Lena leaned toward Celine. Now we change one line, she said. Malik sent the altered instruction. Proceed to Grid Cobalt. Hold for inspection by repair Corvette Vesh. Do not deviate. Grid Cobalt was empty space. Repair Corvette Vesh did not exist. The patrol hesitated, then obeyed. Doctrine 1 over instinct. Across the system, other mirror Vox nodes repeated the trick, rarely and quietly, just enough to seed doubt. 2 cycles later, Terra intercepted a dispute inside Karyth channels. Voices rose, then snapped back into rigid calm. The content was always the same. Lena watched the thread like a clinician. They fear disorder more than death, she said. If they admit an intruder, their hierarchy breaks. Malik pushed the pressure into logistics. Routine requests for pump diagnostics, route confirmations, escort tallies, and each request was slightly off, forcing clerks to escalate and forcing chains to slow. Karyth ships began to appear in the wrong places at the wrong times. Not as a collapse, but as a machine grinding. To test how far obedience could be bent, Malik targeted a supply loop feeding the blockade. He issued a reroute notice that looked like a bureaucratic correction. 2 cargo haulers complied, without question, and drifted toward a rendezvous that was not theirs. A real Karyth escort met them there, confused and angry, and a second escort arrived convinced the first had forged orders. The argument stayed inside encrypted channels, but its heat spilled into maneuvering. Ships changed formation, weapons warmed, then cooled again. Celine watched the recording afterward. No shots were fired, yet an hour of patrol coverage vanished from a map. The gap was wide enough for a Terran drone boat to slip through and harvest more handshakes. Lena tapped a section of the transcript. They call every deviation contamination, she said. They build empires on fear of the unknown. The first public sign came from beyond Sol. A neutral merchant beacon, likely watched by the Galactic Conclave, recorded an odd hail. A Karyth escort used the right transponder and the right voice, but it asked the same question twice, as if checking its own script. Celine read the transcript and felt the galaxy shift. Someone in the Conclave would mark that anomaly and pretend it was only about Karyth. Malik closed the channel. We are not killing them, he said. We are making them look inward. And when they look inward, Lena said they stop looking outward. Celine did not let herself hope. Mirror Vox could slow the enemy. It could not end the siege. Keep it subtle, Celine said. Enough to crack, not enough to warn. Malik met her gaze. Kale Vorn will still feel it. Good, Celine said. Let him show his hand. Kale Vorn did not lash out blindly. He tightened the air around Terra until the planet could almost hear the squeeze. On the 3rd day after backscatter, Karyth ships formed an arc between Luna Arc and the inner lanes. They became a wall. A message arrived on a carrier beam, delivered as if Kale Vorn wanted it heard. This is Grand Admiral Kale Vorn of the Karyth Hegemony, the voice said. Your concealment is noted. Your interference is measured. Your outcome is still negotiable. Celine listened with Malik and Lena. No one spoke until the message continued. Terran industry will cease unauthorized emissions, Vorn said. Your shipyards in the Ares belt will reduce output. Your orbital collectors will stand down. Your defense. Lattice will surrender its control codes. Then came the threat, stated without drama. Spearfall rods are in position, Vorn said. They will strike targets that sustain resistance. They will strike what keeps you capable. Orson Cade called within an hour, face sharp with fatigue. He wants the Conclave to see him as restrained, Cade said. If Spearfall falls on the Ares belt, we lose repair capacity. Celine answered evenly. He is restrained. That is why he is dangerous. Cade leaned closer. If we expose our strike path now, he crushes it. If we do nothing, he strangles us. That night, Lena brought Celine a second intercept. It was not a broadcast, but a clipped internal directive that had leaked through the noise. It listed targets as if they were inventory. Aries belt power couplers, propellant cracking arrays, thermal dump manifolds, comms masts that supported the last fragments of the Aegis lattice. Malik traced the directive back to Kale Vorn's staff channels. He is scheduling punishment, Malik said. He wants us to watch the calendar and break. Celine opened a private link to the Aries belt yards. The yardmaster answered with a face smeared in coolant and fatigue. Admiral, we can move some rigs, the yardmaster said. But every move costs output. Celine held the line steady. Move what you can without lighting up the sky, she said. Hide in the shadows of your own heat. Let the rest look ordinary. When the link closed, Celine sat alone for a moment. The decision tasted like metal. Saving everything was no longer an option. Choosing what to lose was the only kind of control left. Celine did not soften the truth. I will not trade our chance for comfort, she said. If we want to breathe later, we cut his throat first. After the call, Celine walked the corridor until cooling pumps replaced voices in her head. She stopped at a viewport and watched sunlight catch the ruins of Luna Arc Mallet-Joiner. We can disperse work, he said. It buys days. Lena arrived with fresh intercepts. Mirror Vox is biting, she said. Karyth captains are delaying for confirmations. Escorts are doubling back. Celine turned from a viewport. Not enough to free Terra, she said. Lena nodded. Enough to hide knife. Celine gathered her people in the briefing bay. No banners. No speeches. Only thin lines on a map. We go outward, Celine said. We take the war off Terra's doorstep. Backscatter continues, Malik said. Light strikes. No patterns. Mirror Vox stays quiet, Lena said. We make them argue, not panic. Celine looked at the corridor leading toward Caro's Gate Relay and, beyond that, Nissa Junction. We protect what we can in the Aries belt, Celine said. But we accept a wound if that wound buys us the gate. A junior officer asked, voice tight. And if Spearfall falls? Celine met the question. Then we repair with what remains, she said. And we finish this before there is nothing left to repair. Hours later, the Resolute shifted course by a fraction. Not enough to be noticed. Enough to be committed. Kale Vorn had built a wall around Terra. Celine chose to slip a blade around it and aim for the artery beyond the Sol system. The first Spearfall rod did not announce itself with fire. It announced itself with a missing line on a production schedule. At Aries belt yards, a yardmaster saw the incoming track on a dirty screen. It was a cold equation, not a screaming missile. The rod hit just off the main docks. Molten grit fanned out and sandblasted thermal panels across 3 bays. Heat alarms woke everywhere at once. Fragments kept circling, hot and fast, turning repair walks into a gamble. The yards dumped heat until radiators glowed, then shut down sections to protect crews. On Terra, the war arrived as ration schedules and exhausted technicians. On the Resolute, Admiral Celine Ward watched the yard feed collapse into jamming haze. She could not hear the workers, but she could see the heat bloom. Karyth was not killing at random. Karyth was trimming options. Dr. Lena Maris stood behind Celine, voice low. They are narrowing your future, Lena said. They want you fixing metal instead of steering war. Commander Malik Rains entered with a decoded fragment. Internal Karyth targeting list, he said. Functions, not names. Celine read it once. Fuel cracking arrays. Pump farms. Thermal dump manifolds. Relay supports. If Terra lost those, Terra would still exist, but it would not move. Captain Ilya Mercer asked, do we answer with everything? Celine shook her head. Not with everything, she said. With the right thing. A second Spearfall rod fell near an inner lane relay frame. It did not hit the relay head. It hit the structure. That kept the relay steady. The mast sagged, then broke away. Late messages became lost messages. Backup links tried to pick up the slack, but each hop added delay. Orders arrived after the moment they were meant to save. Crews learned to act on intent instead of instruction, then report later when the air cleared. Director Orson Cade appeared on a secure feed. His face looked carved from fatigue. You promised proof, Cade said. Right now, I see rationing by orbit. Celine kept her reply short. I see a fleet exposing its throat, she said. Give me one decisive cut. Kate stared at the map. If Ares loses output, the Conclave will assume we are finished. They will assume what Karyth wants, Selene said. Let them assume it. Lena spoke Karytholi. Director, if Terra protects every machine, Kale Vorn owns the tempo. If Terra breaks his logistics, he loses tempo. Cade held the silence, then nodded once. Do it. Bring me something the galaxy cannot dismiss. The feed cut. Selene walked the medical corridor once. She passed evac survivors sleeping under thin blankets. No one would die for pride, she told herself. Not if she could help it. She looked at Malik. Cold meridian? Glasswing is fueled, Malik said. One clean window before Nissa rotates its guards. Selene thought of coughing welders and dim surgery lights. She forced the thought into discipline. No revenge strikes, Selene said. No fallos. We cut what feeds the siege. She issued the order. Begin operation, Cold Meridian. The Glasswing did not sprint toward Nissa Junction. It drifted there, firing shallow bursts in other ships' wake. Heat was the one truth you could not fake, so the frigate stayed cold and patient. It hid its radiator cycles behind debris and traffic. As the Glasswing closed on the junction, its crew watched their own numbers. Coolant margin was thin. A long burn would flare their heat signature like a beacon. A short burn could miss the corridor and leave them exposed in open space. Malik Rains stood in the operations bay. A thin line marked Nissa Junction, a compact hub where convoys met escorts and relay traffic was sorted into rigid lanes. Dr. Lena Maris watched an authentication chain scroll. Karyth trust procedure, she said. They trust it because it calms them. A junior tech asked, what if they notice our cadence is off? They notice panic, Lena said. So do not panic. The junction pinged the void with disciplined pulses. Malik answered with mirror vox, using the ghost key package as scaffolding. This is service craft Kelm. Request routing confirmation. Maintenance variance logged. A pause. Provide your audit token, a station voice replied. Malik sent it, not perfect but familiar enough. Proceed to latch Corridor 7. Do not deviate. Corridor 7 forced ships to present heat and mass for scanning. Malik entered it on purpose. Helix swarm drones spilled from the bay and clung to a dead cargo frame near the corridor. They watched the sensor net and echoed pulses back with micro delays. On the junction screens, it looked like routine drift and routine fault. An operator opened a checklist that solved routine faults. The checklist demanded a second signature. The second demanded a third. 3 stations waited in line, obedient to their own safety ritual. Lena pointed at the timing. They are already slowing, she said. They are asking permission to breathe. Malik pushed the boarding team through a service hatch on a shadowed access arm. Inside, corridors were dry and cold, built to make crews feel sharp. Inside the service trunk, the boarding team moved in magnetic boots, careful not to wring tools on metal. Their suit fans were throttled low, because heat could betray them. A technician clipped a recorder to the power bus to capture how the hub made decisions. A guard raised a scanner at the first checkpoint. Malik spoke through mirror vox, calm and clipped. Inspection team. Variance logged. Security stand down. The guard hesitated. A stunned pulse hit the suit seam. The guard fell without a cry. At the authentication cabinet, a tech inserted capture handshakes and let the system believe it was being audited. The cabinet opened. Half the gate arms lost power. Docking locks froze mid-cycle, and convoys had a hold. When half the gate arms went dark, Malik ordered manual pins into the nearest access doors. A dark gate could become a trap. Lena watched Karyth stations wait for approved steps as ships stacked behind frozen locks. Karyth escorts shifted to cover the stalled line. They did it by the book, forming triangles and waiting for the junction master to issue new arcs. They will not break formation without instruction, Lena said. They will wait. Malik nodded. Then we become the instruction. He sent a routing notice stamped with the right codes and delays. 2 escort groups swapped lanes to hold for inspection, and a gap opened near the central relay spine. A Helix drone crawled along the spine, and clipped a passive coupler. The relay did not scream. It simply stopped acknowledging Karyth tags and started acknowledging Terran ones. On the Resolute, Celine saw clean logistics from beyond Sol. Not a full map, but enough. Schedules, fuel margins, repair rotation, and choke points. On the glass wing, an emergency burst cut through. Abnormal routing detected. Lockdown. Initiate purge protocol. Malik stiffened. They will burn their own junction to deny us control. On the station, purge did not mean a dramatic self-destruct. It meant wiping routing history, severing couplers, and flooding service trunks with inert gas to force intruders out. It was slow sabotage, designed to leave the hub alive, but untrustworthy. That is their habit, Linus said. If they cannot trust it, they destroy it. Malik keyed the team channel. Extract. Take the routing core. Leave nothing that slows you. The glass wing detached and drifted away with stolen authority in memory. Behind it, Nissa Junction began to close like a fist. Cale Vorn did not rage when Nissa slipped. He adjusted and made his threat sharper. Spearfall sequence revised, his carrier voice said. Industrial targets will be struck until your outer operations cease. On the Resolute, Celine listened without moving. Earth was a blue curve under a gray web of patrol lines. The web looked patient. Malik arrived with a fresh block of capture routing. We have convoy schedules beyond Sol, he said, and we have a name. Fleet Admiral Joran Vaz. Lena added, Vaz is a node, not a symbol. If we hold him, we hold proof for the Conclave. Mercer glanced at the map. Cale Vorn is moving his main group closer. He will crush our outward line if he can. Celine traced the thickest convoy path. It ran from Varkesh Reach toward Caro's Gate Relay, then bent inward to feed the blockade. Celine gathered her senior crew with the lights low. Just the map and the hard fact that every choice had victims. We will lose ships, Mercer said. We lose more if we wait, Celine replied. And we take prisoners when we can. Celine tapped the convoy spine. That path is the artery, she said. If we cut it, the wall starves. Mercer asked, and if we miss? Celine answered without drama. Then Spearfall falls until Terra cannot rebuild. He will call it restraint. Malik said, we can cut it, but not without bait. Celine understood. A fleet only commits when it believes the route is safe and the enemy is desperate. We show him desperation he can measure, Celine said. A decoy near Ares. A false burst that looks like panic. Lena's jaw tightened. You will let him hit again. I will let him hit what I choose, Celine said. While he watches that, we close his door. The decoy group lit up near the damaged docks, loud enough to be seen. Karyth sensors noticed, and escorts pivoted. Cale Vorn pivoted with them. His strike hit a thermal farm, not a shipyard. The blast was small, but the message was large. You will not grow back quickly. Celine watched the heat curve and gave Malik a single word. Now, out beyond the inner lanes, Terran ships slid into the convoy spine. They used captured stamps and mirror check in delays. They looked like Karyth just long enough to get close. A command shuttle rode inside the convoy ring with a tight guard arc. Its identifier burst matched the name Lena had flagged. That is Vaz, Lena said. Malik's team clamped the shuttle, cut a seam, and moved in close silence. A Karyth officer raised a sidearm. A stunned pulse dropped him. No blood, no spectacle. Fleet Admiral Joran Vaz backed toward the cockpit door, eyes wide. Who are you? He demanded. Malik stepped forward. Terra, he said. You are coming with us. Vaz lunged. Malik caught him, drove him down, and snapped a restraint band onto his wrists. The band tightened until struggle became pointless. Outside, Karyth escorts tried to rebuild their picture. They demanded confirmations from the relay's spine, but the spine hesitated. Doctrine became sludge. You will live, Malik said. You will be treated as a prisoner of war. But you will not stop this. Karyth escorts finally realized the pattern was wrong. They fired. Terran decoys answered, not to win, but to buy seconds. In those seconds, Celine's trap closed. Fuel tenders vented to avoid capture. Repair corvettes were redirected into dead lanes. A relay confirmation cycle failed, and doctrine slowed the whole formation. Kael'Vorn saw the door closing and chose his last option. He pulsed a new spearfall list through his fleet. Solar collectors, thermal dump rings, propellant basins. Kael'Vorn's list was aimed at machinery, not cities. If collectors went dark and heat dumps shattered, Terra would be alive but isolated. He would offer the galaxy a quiet collapse it could ignore. Not punishment crippling. Mercer spoke softly. He is not trying to win today. He is trying to make sure we cannot fight tomorrow. Selene watched Malik's team vanish with Vaz into shadow. One proof secured. One artery cut. But the countdown had changed. Bring Vaz home, Selene said. Then we finish this before Spearfall makes our sky a graveyard of broken machines. Earth kept turning beneath the net. In the silence of space, time moved like a blade. The corridor did not look like a weapon. It looked like a missing page in the galaxy's paperwork. A relay that should have acknowledged Karyth traffic simply did not answer. A supply tender that should have checked in at a junction never arrived. A repair corvette that should have been predictable became a ghost. Operation Quiet Eclipse began with small cuts. Admiral Selene Ward refused to chase Kael'Vorn's wall head-on. She aimed at the muscles behind it. On the Resolute, charts filled with captured routing from Nissa Junction. Lena Maris circled the same lines again and again, tracing where fear became habit. They will try to patch the throat with more escorts, Lena said. They will try to brute force trust. Commander Malik Rains watched the same map with different eyes. Trust is where we leave footprints, he said. So we step lightly. Terran ships slipped into the outer lanes under borrowed credentials. Mirror Vox did not shout. It whispered, just enough to sound like a bored clerk. A Karyth depot near the Varkesh Reach received a routine notice. A refueling bay shut down for a safety audit, and a convoy waited. Heat built in their radiators until the escorts had to vent. That vent was the only flare Terra needed. Helix swarm drones, cold and patient, rode the edge of the vent plume. They sampled frequencies, beam shapes, and the tiny timing errors that revealed who was really talking. Then they relayed the samples back through a chain of passive couriers. Selene watched the data turn into choices. No city targets, she said. No habitats. We take away their ability to keep coming. A Terran strike team intercepted a Karyth repair barge at the rim of the corridor. They did not blow it apart. They disabled its propulsion with a tight burst to the control spine and latched on. Inside, Malik found the first proof that Karyth conquest ran on forced labor. The barge carried adults in pressure suits with corporate tags burned into their wrist plates. They were not soldiers. They were inventory. A Karyth overseer reached for a console with shaking hands. Malik spoke calmly. Step away. You will be treated as a prisoner if you comply. The overseer tried to trigger a wipe. A Helix drone, perched in the ceiling like a dull insect, flashed a stun pulse. The overseer crumpled. Lena joined the boarding crew long enough to read the manifests. She did not flinch at the words. She flinched at the structure. It is not chaos, Lena said. It is a system. Routes, quotas, punishments. The barge log showed transfer points, payment tokens, and escort codes. Every line was signed and stamped like lawful commerce. Selene felt a cold anger rise and forced it down into discipline. On the next intercept, Karyth fought back with competence. A convoy that looked ripe for capture turned out to be bait. It carried heat sinks packed with fragmentation charges and a data core wired to self-burn. A Terran frigate latched onto the bait and a blast shook its hull. Not enough to kill the ship, but enough to force it to dump heat and expose itself. Karyth escorts pounced. Selene watched the tactical feed and tasted the trap. Kael'Vorn was learning her tempo. He was setting hooks in the places she liked to bite. Break away, Selene ordered. Take the logs and leave the prize. The frigate tore free, trailing a bright ribbon of vented coolant. It survived, but it returned with its radiators scarred and its crew shaken. Hours later, Malik stood in Selene's briefing bay with a drive case in his hands. The case held nothing flashy. It held a chain of custody. Forced labor manifests, Malik said. Escort codes. Transfer routes. Payment proofs. Lena added a second file. Audio and imagery from the barge, she said. Adult captives. Overseer protocols. Medical rationing. Celine kept her voice even. This is what the galaxy pretends not to see, she said. Beyond the Sol system, the corridor widened. Not as an explosion, but as a spreading administrative failure. Every time Karyth tried to reroute, Terra moved the gap. Every time Karyth tried to verify, Mirror Vox slowed the answer. Cale Vorn still had ships. He still had spearfall rods. But now he had to spend time keeping his empire coherent. Celine looked at the proof on the table and felt the next war forming. Not in vacuum. In a room with polished floors and careful words. Lena said it without heat. Politics will be harder than a blockade. Celine nodded. And it will still be war. Astra Hall was built to make violence look uncivilized. Its ceiling vanished into shadow, and its floor shone like water. Representatives drifted in their assigned seats, wrapped in atmosphere suits or surrounded by tailored fields. Envoy Zarek Maluan stood at the central dais and spoke as if he were reading a quarterly report. The Karyth Hegemony has expanded administrative responsibility, Zarek said. An underdeveloped system was stabilized. Disruptive elements were reduced. A ripple of polite indifference moved through the chamber. Some delegates looked away. Some leaned in, hungry for precedent. Elder Magistrate Sorenval did not look away. His posture was rigid, and his eyes were too old to be fooled by euphemism. Name the system, Sorenval said. Zarek paused, then smiled. Terra, within the Sol system, he said. A minor world. Sorenval's fingers tightened on the rail of his seat. The rail creaked, a small failure of material under ancient pressure. Say the species, Sorenval said. Zarek shrugged. Terrans, he replied. Humans, if one prefers their own label. For a moment, Astra Hall held its breath. Some delegates shifted, confused by the reaction. Others stiffened, as if they recognized a taboo without knowing why. A security official from the Conclave Security Bureau leaned toward their comm panel, uncertain. Sorenval rose. His voice was quiet, and that quiet carried farther than any shout. Open the Areb Vol Codex, Sorenval said. A clerk at the dais blinked. Magistrate, that archive is sealed by unanimous decree. Then record my motion and my responsibility, Sorenval said. If I am wrong, I will bear the cost. If I am right, you will thank fear for saving you. Zarek spread his hands. A melodrama, he said. Terrans are primitive. Sorenval turned his gaze on. Zarek, primitive is not the same as harmless, he said. And you have confused the two. The chamber systems issued a warning, cold and mechanical. Restraint archive. Absolute hazard. Authorized only by emergency doctrine. Sorenval placed his hand on the authorization field. The light recognized him. The seal broke. A wall display filled with old records. Not myths. Logs, after-action summaries, and casualty projections that read like weather forecasts. A phrase repeated in multiple languages, translated into the Conclave standard. Terrans adapt in combat faster than doctrine can update. Terrans learn the enemy's procedures, then rewrite them into traps. Terrans treat systems as laboratories. Zarek laughed once, brittle. Ancient exaggerations, he said. Sorenval did not argue with emotion. He pointed at the footnotes. These are not poems, he said. They are audits. The records described small Terran groups breaking fleets through logistics collapse. They described how enemies died with full fuel tanks because their supply chains stopped trusting themselves. They described how Terrans disappeared and how the conclave of that era sealed the truth out of terror. A delegate asked, voice thin, why seal it? Sorenval answered, because the galaxy feared a return, not of monsters, of accountability. Murmurs rose. Some delegates looked at Zarek with new calculation. Others looked at Sorenval with anger, as if anger could erase a warning. In the upper tiers, Prefect Nix Corval watched without moving. Nix did not fear the record. Nix feared losing control of the narrative. When the display ended, Astra Hall did not erupt. It fractured. Some wanted sanctions on Karyth. Some wanted to isolate Terra. Some wanted to pretend the archive had never opened. Nix Corval spoke at last, voice smooth as polished metal. The Conclave must prevent escalation, Nix said. Any species capable of systemic collapse is a threat to stability. Shoran fall met Nixgesh. Stability built on slavery is not stability, Soren said. Nix smiled. It is a structure, Nix replied. And structures can be maintained. Astra Hall did not need weapons to feel dangerous. Words were enough. Terra's ultimatum arrived across the galaxy as a controlled broadcast. It did not threaten annihilation. It presented evidence. Forced labor manifests, escort codes, relay tampering logs, medical rationing records, testimony from Fleet Admiral Joran Vaz, taken under lawful detention. The message requested a hearing. It demanded an end to expansion wars. It offered terms. That sounded like law, not revenge. Within a day, Nix Corval answered with a different message. It used a voice like Selene Ward's. It used Terran cadence and Terran restraint. It also contained a sentence Selene had never spoken, a sentence that implied Terra would replace regimes by force across the galaxy. The Conclave did what it always did under confusion. It hesitated. In a side chamber beneath Astra Hall, Malik Rains watched the false broadcast loop on a secure screen. He did not swear. He did not slam a table. He asked for the logs. A Conclave technician, nervous and proud, handed him a chain record. Malik studied the signature stamps. They looked correct until you saw what they were missing. Tiny timing marks. Handshake noise. The human error that real transmissions always carried. This is forged, Malik said. Nix Galvelis ed Snaped. Prove it. Malik pointed at the relay path. The audio was routed through Karyth authentication layers, he said. Not Terran. It wears a Terran voice, but it walks in Karyth boots. The technician swallowed. That is possible. It is easy if you own the Conclave's fear, Malik said. And you have help. Lena Maris joined him with a second packet. She placed it on the table like a scalpel. We captured Karyth pump logic and relay handshakes during backscatter, Lena said. This forgery uses the same maintenance key family. The aide tried to interrupt. Lena did not raise her voice. She raised the chain of custody. Here is the first contact sample, Lena said. Here is the junction path. Here is the mismatch. Malik looked at the Conclave technician. If you publish this, Nix Corval loses leverage, he said. If you hide it, you become part of the conquest. The technician's hands shook. Then they steadied. I will submit it to the Bureau, the technician said. On record, in a secured holding suite on the edge of the complex, Fleet Admiral Joran Vaz sat with his wrists unbound. Not out of kindness, but out of calculation. He had nowhere to go. Selene Ward entered without ceremony. She did not threaten him. She did not plead. You will speak, Selene said. You will tell them how Karyth uses people. Vaz's eyes were tired, not soft. You think the Conclave cares? He asked. Selene answered with quiet certainty. They care about control, she said. They will care when they realize Karyth cannot be controlled. And they will care when they see you. Vaz laughed once hollow. Kale Vorn will call me a traitor. Selene nodded. He already has, she said. He will also call your testimony a fabrication. Selene leaned closer. That is why you speak beside the logs, she said. Beside the manifests. Beside the bodies who survived your quotas. Vaz looked away. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. The rods were never meant to end a war, Vaz said. They were meant to end a future. Selene held that sentence, then let it go. Then we deny him that, she said. Outside, Astra Hall prepared for a session that would decide more than a vote. Conclave Security Bureau officers checked seals and scanned for hidden emitters. Delegates whispered in their own air. Nix Corval waited with a calm that felt like a blade. Soren Val waited with a fear that felt like duty. Malik met Selene at the corridor entrance. The forgery is exposed, Malik said. Nix will pivot. Selene looked toward the doors of Astra Hall. Let them pivot, she said. We are done being defined by invaders. The doors opened. Light spilled onto the delegation like a spotlight, cold and public. Selene stepped forward. Malik and Lena followed. Behind them, Jorn Vaz walked under guard, alive and real. Across the galaxy, 1,000 screens leaned closer. In Astrahal, the war changed shape. The first thing Celine Ward heard was not gunfire. It was K.O. Vorn's blockade, breathing through the relay bands, steady and patient. On the Resolute, the tactical plot shimmered with delayed returns. Karyth escorts held their arc between Luna and the inner lanes, and beyond them the dreadnought crown of Varkesh drifted like a dark city. Sato asked, "Carrier beam from Vorn? Audio only?" Celine let it play. "This is Grand Admiral K.O. Vorn," the voice said. "Your delegation has entered Astrahal. Your ships remain in my net." A pause followed, long enough to feel intentional. "I will end this in one cycle," Vorn said. "Spearfall will fall on your collectors and your heat dumps. Your planet will live, and your future will not." Celine did not answer the threat. She looked at Malik Rains and Lena Maris, both standing close enough to share the same air. "We do not chase his wall," Celine said. "We cut his hands." Lena touched the map of Karyth logistics, now scarred by the corridor. "He is feeding that dreadnought through a narrow spine," she said. "If we freeze the spine, his command ship becomes a furnace." Malik nodded once. "Then we make him choose," he said. "Vent and lose control, or hold heat and lose function." Mercer keyed in from the forward group. "Glasswing is in position," Mercer said. "We have line of sight on Crown of Varkesh. No clean shot, but we have access to her tenders." Celine kept her voice even. "No clean shots," she said. "Only clean outcomes." Outside the Resolute, Terran ships spread in silence. They did not charge. They slid into the spaces where paperwork lived, where escorts expected routine and got hesitation. Mirror Vox began to speak in the tone of board authority. It asked for confirmation phrases and maintenance tags. It delayed replies by seconds that turned into minutes. Karyth officers obeyed while they argued. Escort groups doubled back to verify orders. Repair corvettes held position waiting for signatures that never arrived. The first Terran strike hit a fuel tender, not with a bomb, but with a cut. A drone latched to the tender's pump spine and collapsed its pressure balance. Valve shut. The tender went safe, then dead. A second strike hit the relay coupler that fed the dreadnought's escort net. The coupler did not explode. It simply stopped trusting Karyth tags. Crown of Varkesh responded by doctrine. Its escorts tightened. Its guns warmed. Its radiators stayed folded, because a dreadnought that vented heat became a lighthouse. Celine watched the infrared build on the hull. "She is holding heat," Lena said softly. "That means Vorn is confident." Celine answered. "That means he is proud." A Terran decoy boat lit its drives beyond the escort arc, loud and obvious. Karyth trackers snapped to it. 2 escorts broke formation, eager to crush the bait. Celine let them go. She wanted the arc to thin. "Now," Celine said. Glasswing moved like a thought. It slid through the gap, cold and tight, and released Helix drones toward the dreadnought's outer sensor nodes. The drones did not fire weapons. They made the dreadnought see itself. False echoes returned from its own skin, forcing fire control to recheck and recheck until the system slowed. On a secondary channel, Malik spoke to the boarding teams already riding behind the escort. "Layer. Target the command trunk," Malik said. "Do not cut life support. Do not touch the med bays. We take only control." The first boarding clamp bit into a Karyth escort, not the dreadnought. A Terran team entered, stunned the bridge crew, and pulled the escort's command codes out of its NAV core. Those codes became a lever. Crown of Varkesh issued a tight beam to reform its escort arc. The beam carried Vorn's authority, crisp and unmistakable. Mirror Vox answered with the same authority, but one tick out of place in the timing. Just enough to force a double check. Just enough to insert doubt. 2 escort captains waited for confirmation. In that wait, Celine took the next step. "Thermal lock," Celine said. Terran drones painted the dreadnought's radiator seams with fine particles tuned to scatter heat sensors. At the same time, Glasswing sent a burst into the dreadnought's external coolant regulators, a narrow spike that forced an automatic safety mode. The dreadnought's internal alarms rose. Not dramatic sirens, but quiet failures. a valve that refused to open, a pump that hesitated, a regulator that demanded manual override. Kalyth was not trapped by fire. He was trapped by engineering. Sato watched the Karyth channels. He is ordering vent, Sato said. Partial only. Selene felt the moment. If the dreadnought vented, its signature would bloom. If it did not vent, its systems would begin to shut down. Crown of Varkesh unfolded a fraction of its radiators. Heat spilled out, bright as a second sunrise. Terran's sensors drank it in. Lock achieved, Lena said. Selene did not smile. Disable, not destroy, she said. Terran ships fired into the vent plume, not at the hull. They used the plume as a mirror, bending energy and confusing point defense. Helix drones slipped through the distraction and struck the dreadnought's calm spines with cutting pulses. The result was quiet. No heroic explosión. Just a ship losing the ability to coordinate. Escort groups called for direction. The dreadnought answered late, then not at all. Kalyth tried to restore control by hard link. A command shuttle launched from the dreadnought's flank. Malik's team was waiting. The shuttle never cleared the escort arc. It was surrounded, disabled, and pulled into shadow. On the main plot, Crown of Varkesh drifted, guns hot and blind, radiators half open and vulnerable. It could still kill. It could know. Longer command of war. Mercer exhaled on the channel. She is neutralized. Selene watched the dreadnought's icon dim from red to gray. Kalyth had lost his lever. But the Conclave still had its courtroom. Hold position, Selene said. Do not gloat. Do not pursue. We give Astra Hall no excuse. Astra Hall felt colder than vacuum. Selene Ward entered under Conclave security fields, wearing no symbols except a simple Terran insignia. Malik walked at her right, Lena at her left, and behind them Fleet Admiral Joran Vaz moved with the stiff calm of a man who had lost all exits. Prefect Nix Corval waited near the central dais. Nix looked like a person who had never been denied anything by a room. Envoy Zarek Maluan stood with a practiced smile. His posture said victory, even as his eyes flicked toward new data scrolling at the edge of the chamber. Somewhere in that data, the Crown of Varkesh was going silent. Elder Magistrate Soren Val raised a hand. The Conclave recognizes the Terran delegation, Soren said. You have submitted evidence. Present it. Selene did not begin with anger. She began with structure. These are manifests, Selene said. These are transfer routes. These are payment tokens. They show forced labor as policy. A display filled with rows of names, work tags, and quotas. Adult faces appeared, tired and alive, recorded under harsh lights on a repair barge. Medical logs followed, then escort codes that matched Karyth routing, then relay handshakes that proved the system was intentional. Nix leaned forward. Are you accusing the Conclave of complicity? Selene answered without raising her voice. I'm accusing the Conclave of denial, Selene said. Karyth expanded because this room allowed conquest to be called administration. Zarek stepped in. Terrans are manipulating samples, Zarek said. They have attacked lawful assets in Karyth space. Lena spoke, crisp and careful. The chain of custody is intact, Lena said. The relay stamps match Karyth maintenance keys. Your own security bureau verified the forgery against Terra and verified the manifest against Karyth routing. Nix's expression did not change. Nix changed tactics. Terra has used force, Nix said. Terra has interfered with relays. Terra has captured officers. How is that not conquest? Selene looked across the chamber. She did not search for allies. She searched for witnesses. We did not come for territory, Selene said. We came for breathing room. We captured officers to stop a siege, and we treated them as prisoners of war. Nix gestured toward Joran Vaz. Then let the prisoners speak. Vaz lifted his head. For a moment, the room saw a man rather than an emblem. I served Kalyth, Vaz said. I executed quotas. I signed transfers. It was not an accident. It was doctrine. Zarek snapped. Traitor. Vaz did not flinch. I'm a witness, Vaz said. Karyth grows by converting adults into tools, then calling it stability. A delegate from a neutral bloc asked a trembling question. If Terra can neutralize a dreadnought, what stops Terra from ruling us next? Celine held the question like a weight, then answered with something harder than comfort. Rules stop us, Celine said. Structures stop us. That is why we are here, in your hall, and not in your orbit. Nick saw the opening and pushed. Terra wants to rewrite the conclave under threat. Nick said. That is coercion. Soren spoke, voice like stone. Coercion is what Karyth did to Terra, Soren said. Terrans are demanding constraints on coercion. The room shifted, not to agreement, to decision. Celine turned slightly, letting the delegates see her hands were empty. No throne, Celine said. No tribute. Only a line that cannot be crossed again. The session ran through the ship-time night. Arguments rose, fell, and rose again. Legal phrases collided with casualty curves. Comfort fought with evidence. When the final motion came, it did not sound like salvation. It sounded like a contract signed under the knowledge that contracts were now enforceable. Soren read the provisions. No attacks on emerging civilizations, Soren said. An independent oversight cadre for relay and trade monitoring. Sanctions enforced through logistics denial and technology access limits. Celine listened without triumph. She heard the careful language that let proud species survive the admission of guilt. Nix Corval objected at every line. Nix called it instability. Nix called it Terran intimidation. Celine answered once and only once. Stability built on forced labor is a lie. The conclave added a final clause aimed at the Karyth hegemony. Karyth would be placed under restrictions that removed its expeditionary capacity. Its long-range fleets would be monitored. Its relay keys would be audited. Its spearfall stockpiles would be dismantled under inspection. Zarek protested until his voice cracked. Nix tried to delay the vote. But the chamber had seen the price of delay. A message arrived mid-session, carried on a secure internal channel. Crown of Varkesh was adrift, alive and constrained, its command authority broken. Kale Vorn was still breathing, but his war was not. Nix stared at the message longer than anyone else. Nix understood power, and Nix understood leverage had shifted. After the vote, Celine stood before the chamber one last time. We will not govern the galaxy, Celine said. We will not harvest your worlds, but we will not allow a return to slavery under new paperwork. A delegate asked quietly, and if someone tries? Celine met the question. Her voice stayed calm, almost gentle, because she did not need volume. Then we will cut their logistics first, Celine said. And if that fails, we will do what is necessary. But we will do it with rules, in the open, where the galaxy must watch itself. Soren inclined his head, not as worship, but as recognition. Nix Corval did not move. Nix's face remained smooth, but the room could feel the loss. Outside Astra Hall, the galaxy was still the galaxy. Predators would remain. Fear would remain. But now, the paperwork had teeth, and the teeth had a memory of Terra. And so the war did not end with a flag planted in foreign territory or a city turned to ash. It ended the way real wars end, when someone finally refuses to play the old game. Terra did not win by being louder. Terra won by learning faster, by cutting the arteries instead of chasing the fist, and by proving that cruelty can be dismantled without becoming cruelty. The Karyth hegemony lost more than ships. It lost the privilege of calling conquest administration. And the Galactic Conclave learned a truth it had spent millennia burying under elegant language. A civilization is not measured by how far it can expand. It is measured by what it refuses to justify. Out in the lanes beyond Sol, the corridor began to fill again. Relays came back online. Cargo routes reopened. But the galaxy felt different, like a room after the lights turn on. Because now there were rules with teeth. And behind those rules, there was memory. If anyone tried to rebuild slavery under a new name, Terra would not need to shout. It would simply reach for the supply lines, the relay, keys, the quiet mechanisms that make empires move and stop them. Not to rule the galaxy, just to make sure the galaxy could never pretend it did not know. If this story held you until the end, help it travel farther than any fleet. If you'd like to support the channel, share it with someone who loves smart sci-fi, and subscribe so you do not miss the next mission we launch into the dark. And tell me in the comments, if you were in Celine Ward's seat, would you have chosen mercy with rules or victory at any cost?